The sad part to me is a lot of dealerships are acting as if they have their blinders on and they're covering their ears. They're hopeful for a government bailout again. They think that they're going to get handed a golden parachute at the end of all this, no matter what. So between the irresponsible lending practices of so many banks throughout the US, combined with so many consumers committing loan fraud and insurance fraud, we, the regular consumer, we're paying the price. Heaven forbid you have a large family nowadays, because you can't go buy a full-size SUV without totally breaking the bank. Many of these Ford Expeditions here are well over $85,000. A couple of them are $92,000, $93,000. You're in the driver's seat, expect a huge discount and expect an incentivized interest rate right now. And if they don't offer it, like I said, drive up the road, go to the next dealership. Look at this little beep beep here. This has got to be the most affordable vehicle here. Let's say, hey, I was right, look at that. $21,790. Hey YouTube, Untamed here. So we are witnessing the perfect storm when it comes to the automotive market right now. It's happening before our eyes, and I'm confident in saying that we are heading toward a car market crash here in 2025. It truly is going to be the great reset of the car market as we know it. We've seen inflated price tags, companies outsourcing production to cheaper labor countries while still hiking up those price tags. We're seeing record high growth rates of inventory levels across the board, combining that with terrible interest rates that have been plaguing the industry for the last 2 years. All these reasons and some we're going to talk through in this video. And perhaps most importantly, I'm going to talk through which vehicles have been sitting on dealership lots the longest. We'll wrap up with that, so stick with me. Right now we are witnessing the fallout of pandemic pricing. If you recall, many dealerships were truly taking advantage of you and I, the consumer, during the pandemic, right? Due to low supply or supply constraints, they were charging addendums or ADMs over sticker, right? We're talking $10,000, $15,000 or more over that MSRP price, or inflating that sale price with, you know, artificial paint protection packages, blah, 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 you name it, right? They were just inflating the loan amounts. And banks were paying into it. Banks back then were actually offering 110 to 120% of LTV loan to value back then, sometimes up to 150, 160, right? And that was pretty common. Not anymore though. And for that reason though, we are continuously seeing a huge increase in the negative equity rates for Americans. Right now, the national negative equity that American holds is about $7,200. That's up from $6,600 just a quarter ago. So just 3 or 4 months ago, it was $6,600. That's continuously increasing because the values of vehicles are going down substantially, while you still owe that tremendous amount on that loan that you overpaid for from the beginning. So most Americans right now, they owe $7,200 more than what their vehicle's currently worth. That's a shame. And only now dealerships are beginning to kick themselves. As they walk their dealership lots and they can't sell this inventory, they're in a position where they actually have to turn away their allocations. They have to turn away the deliveries of these vehicles because they no longer have the room for them. And that's becoming the major problem right now. We talked about it before, but we now have over 3 million brand new vehicles available within the US, 2.2 million used vehicles available currently, right now. That's far too much, and that growth rate is over 120% since 2023. That's an alarming growth rate, and it's only going to get worse as we move into 2025. Many dealerships really have to regret taking advantage of their customer, right? You know, they were in a tight spot too, they didn't have a whole lot of supply, but that is no reason to take advantage of people. Everybody was hurting during the pandemic, and because of that, they lost so many loyal customers. Customers who have been returning to that dealership for years, sometimes even decades throughout their family, right? But now they're really kicking themselves because they took advantage of that person. They're not going to return to that dealership, and now they need them more than ever. Every single vehicle you see at this dealership, they're paying a flooring cost. That flooring cost is an interest rate, kind of like a credit card, that they pay on every single vehicle. Every piece of inventory that they have, every single month. It's not a large amount. It does depend on the price of the vehicle, but it's always a pretty small amount, but it becomes suffocating when you have such tremendous inventory like this, right? Every single one of these vehicles is costing this dealership money. It's hard to keep up with. You know, throughout the last few years, buying a full-size heavy-duty diesel pickup truck has been pretty difficult to get a desirable trim, right? But that is certainly not the case right now. As you see me before me here, this is very common. This is a very common sight across many dealerships across the US right now. These are pretty desirable trims, especially this one here, a Ford F350 Lariat 6.7 liter high output engine here with the power stroke and the Tremor package. But look at that price tag. That's just unbearable for most Americans. But let's face it, every time there is a presidential election within the US, there is a time of uncertainty, right? Especially when it comes to the economy. You know, things can't get too much worse than what they have been throughout the last 4 years when it comes to the economy. I don't care what side of the fence you're on, it's been pretty terrible and very rough on Americans. You know, the proof is in the pudding. There's no really debating that part of it. But people are hopeful. They're hopeful that interest rates could come down a little bit. You know, they can't get much worse, and they have been terrible throughout the last 3 years anyway. So we're hopeful that things could get a little bit better, and perhaps a lot of Americans are just waiting. They're waiting to see that upswing of the economy that can actually help them be in a better position to buy a new vehicle. And although I've talked about it before, I think it's important to include in each of these videos the upcoming tariffs that President Trump is going to apply to a lot of vehicles built in cheaper labor countries intended for the US isn't going to be so detrimental to you and I, the consumer. I firmly believe that. A lot of people see that they're going to be charging a 25% tariff on vehicles built in Mexico, for instance, intended for the US market. People think that we are going to get stuck with that added 25% bill. I disagree. Look around me. They can't sell these vehicles as is. They're not going to be able to hike them up 25% more than what they already have. We've already seen a 42% increase in MSRP since 2019, and people aren't buying them. People are voting with their pocketbooks right now. Unless a company wants to commit company suicide, they're not going to do that. They just can't. They're going to have to find another avenue to cut into those profit margins. It's not going to be sticking you and I with a bill, because people just won't buy it. I mean, there's a reason why you see once very popular nameplates sitting on dealership lots collecting dust. Well, in this case, snow. We have the Toyota Tacoma here, brand new 4th generation here, introduced in 2024. Normally when Toyota offers a full new redesign of a vehicle, it flies off the shelf. People are wildly excited about it, especially with a popular nameplate like the Tacoma here, right? Because what does the Tacoma normally mean? It means reliability, simplicity, and affordability. All three of those things have gone far out the window with this new generation here. I can't say I'm shocked though, because what did Toyota do? They moved production entirely to Mexico for the Toyota Tacoma in particular, where they save over 80% in labor costs alone. But we as Americans actually buying these things, we didn't see any of those savings. In fact, we saw a 25% price hike in that MSRP compared to the 2023 model, which is completely unfair. But that is why people are voting with their pocketbooks. They're not buying these things. And when you combine that with the fact that they put a tiny little 2.4 liter 4-cylinder underneath the hood, a turbocharged 4-cylinder, and with a faulty automatic transmission, people just have lost confidence in this Toyota Tacoma here. It's just a prime example of quality going down and price tags going up. Look at this thing. I mean, right? We have a $53,000 Toyota Tacoma. Since when does a mid-sized pickup truck need to cost that much? This needs to be about 35 grand tops. And if you're looking to spend $75,000 or more on a pickup truck with a terrible turn radius, a large overbite front end, and a main crankshaft bearing safety recall, look no further, because here you have it. This brand new Toyota Tundra here is sitting on dealership lots for over 250 to 280 days right now. People are just not buying this once very popular, once very reliable nameplate here. This has really left Toyota enthusiasts feeling cheated. Man, I'd love to see what the profit margins are on these things, because the overall quality is just so chintzy. The interior is plasticky. I've owned one before, extremely lackluster, and I regret buying it. This one here is a limited example, and well, we're looking at $66,473. This doesn't even have the hybridized iForce Max, the quote-unquote best engine available, and they still want that kind of price tag. It blows my mind, because the 2021 Tundra TRD Pro with the 5.7 liter V8, the top trim example, was 54 grand. Oh, how times have changed. Unfortunately, what you see with the Tundra and the Tacoma there isn't unique to Toyota, right? All vehicle manufacturers are doing it. It's just most obvious with Toyota, and myself being a Toyota enthusiast, I notice it and I take it more personally with this brand in particular. But every company is doing it. They're trying to maximize those profit margins, lessening the quality of their product. How can they make it the fastest, the most affordable way, while still hitting you with an inflated price tag? That's what they all do, and it's a shame. Auto manufacturers were able to get away with it though throughout the last few years, because money was cheap during the pandemic, right? You could get an inflated loan, auto loan out, again, 110, 120% LTV, get it for a 1.9% interest rate over 72 months or more, and you can still buy the vehicle. And people were falling victim to that because it was easy. Everybody could do it. Not the case anymore. 1 out of 5 auto loans that were applied for this last quarter were denied. In fact, banks are really clamping down. No longer can you walk into a dealership and put 0 down with an excellent credit score and walk out with a new vehicle. They're wanting you to put a large amount of money down to show some skin in the game, right? They want you to do that, provide proof of income, proof of residency, proof of your DTI, your debt to income. What are all your other bills combined? Can you afford that monthly payment? They want to see that before they issue you a payment. So it's becoming much more difficult these days. On top of that, they're actually requiring a lot of folks to provide references, maybe 3 to 5 references of individuals who they, the bank, can call and contact if you fail to make your payments. That 23% increase in repossession rates since last year, that is huge. That is unprecedented. And that is why we're seeing banks clamp down. Can you imagine not making a couple payments on a vehicle, then them calling your family or your best friends to try to get after you? That wouldn't be good at all. Nowadays, many people are kind of feeling loosely forced to buy vehicles like this. Vehicles between that $28,000 and $35,000 price range, the examples that get good fuel economy, because people can actually afford this. Not because they're wildly impressed or wildly excited about vehicles like this Toyota Prius here, but they can actually make these payments. And I gotta admit, as I walk through this dealership here, the vehicles that are the most scarce are these fuel efficient, more affordable options like the Toyota Camry that you see behind me, like that Toyota Prius, the Toyota GR86, Toyota Corolla Crosses. There's only a few of them here because, like I said, people can actually afford to buy these things. On top of that, vehicle insurance is definitely a factor to consider. You can actually afford the insurance rates on these vehicles because, well, if you crash this and total it, it's going to cost a lot less money for the insurance company to either pay out a totaled vehicle or replace or repair it, right? So it's definitely a part of consideration here. Let's face it, Americans have had enough and they're clearly voting with their pocketbooks, right? We see that 23% increase in repossession rates. People just can't afford to make these auto loan payments. It is generally the first thing to go, combined with all their other bills and payments that Americans have. Combine that with the fact with mortgage and rent going up nearly double over the last 6 years. Combine that with insurance premiums over doubling in the last 2.5 years, and with many states seeing a 60% compounding growth rate of insurance premiums every year, year over year. People can't keep up with that. Combine that with the cost of living, cost of groceries. People are fed up. And it's abundantly clear when you walk a dealership. But the sad part to me is a lot of dealerships are acting as if they have their blinders on and they're covering their ears. They're hopeful for a government bailout again. They think that they're going to get handed a golden parachute at the end of all this, no matter what. Which is why you still see some dealerships still deploy greedy tactics. They're still doing it, as if we're not living in this current environment, which is completely baffling to me. You still see some dealerships trying to charge ADMs, $5,000, $10,000 markups. I'll maybe show an example here on the screen. Some are still trying to deploy those tactics, which I don't understand. And if I'm being honest with you, those are the dealerships that I hope truly go under, right? The people that do not care whatsoever for you and I, and they'll treat you as a customer like another brick in the wall, as they did during the pandemic, trying to tag you with the markup. No thanks. Imagine walking into a dealership actually feeling pretty good. Most people would rather go to the dentist compared to going to buy a brand new vehicle because they never know if they get a good deal, right? You walk in there, you get so many sleazy car salesmen that are just running you through the ringer, constantly going back and forth with, oh, let me go talk to my manager, let me go see what I can do. The back and forth is draining on people, and people hate that experience. Most people do, let's face it. Imagine if you could actually go to an honest dealer and feel really good about the whole experience and have transparent pricing and knowing exactly what invoice is on that vehicle, how far off an invoice are you. Imagine that. But instead, they nickel and dime you with these paint protection, these inflated price tags. The finance department will try to sell you 4 different extended warranties. You know, you just never feel great. And that's why I do believe that we do need to clear the swamp. Drain the swamp out a little bit, get rid of these nasty, greedy dealers within the US here. Don't protect them, don't bail them out. In fact, get some honest folks in here, make the car buying process fun and good again, right? Imagine that. Trucks like this used Ford F-150 Raptor behind me would have never sat on a dealership lot unsold. But the used market is taking an even greater hit. Obviously, with all that new vehicle inventory sitting collecting dust with huge discounts and incentivized interest rates applied, that means your used vehicle, your trade-in, well, the value of that is being hit even harder. We saw an 18% price decrease within the wholesale market this last quarter in 2024. That generally has a 3 to 4 month trickle behind effect for the consumer, you and I, our market. So hopefully, as we teeter into 2025 here, you will begin to see pretty big savings on used vehicle inventory too. But just be forewarned that your vehicle that you own right now will likely have a terrible trade offer when you go to get that new vehicle in 2025. So definitely a double-edged sword. You're going to be able to get a phenomenal deal on your vehicle that you're getting, but your trade-in value is going to be extremely lackluster. But if I'm being honest with you, I think I prefer it that way. You know, if you're going to buy a used vehicle, you should absolutely expect to see huge savings comparatively to buying brand new, right? That's the way it used to be. That's the way it always has been. But during the pandemic, due to those supply constraints, we saw so many dealerships getting very close to MSRP on their lightly used examples and models, which makes zero sense to me. And heaven forbid you have a large family nowadays, because you can't go buy a full-size SUV without totally breaking the bank. Many of these Ford Expeditions here are well over $85,000. A couple of them are $92,000, $93,000. This one here, an example of just that. $92,155 for this Ford Expedition Max Limited Stealth. No thank you. And a part of the rub for me is the prices of these right here. Well, those are now the prices of what these over here used to be. Makes zero sense. These over here are $80,000 to $100,000. Those Ford Rangers, well, you're looking at $45,000 to $55,000 across the board. I find it kind of crazy how much Ford is backpedaling on the pricing of some of their examples to include the Ford Bronco Raptor, right? This Bronco Raptor here, over $100,000, but now many Ford dealerships are discounting it $15,000 to $20,000 off. I follow a number of Facebook pages, Facebook groups for the Ford Bronco Raptor in particular. 20 grand off is becoming quite commonplace. It's concerning because what does that say? It means that they wildly overpriced this thing out of the gate for what you're getting. Look at that. $98,000 MSRP. This particular one has a package on it of some sort, bringing it over 100 grand. No thank you. South Korean auto manufacturers like Hyundai and Kia have come a long way, but so have their price tags. Many of the examples here at this Hyundai dealership, you know, between the Hyundai Santa Fe, the Santa Cruz that you see behind me there, the Hyundai Palisade too, many of these are priced between that $42,000 and $55,000 price range, which really does align well with the current national average new vehicle price. The current new vehicle price average across the US right now is $48,405. We have steadily seen that creep up. We saw a little bit of a decrease since last year, but again, those numbers right there, they used to be in the $30,000 range, but due to inflation and all these other reasons, they've just gotten far out of hand. Interest rates have not let up at all throughout the last couple of years here. An interest rate for a new vehicle loan right now, the national average, right at 7%. If you're to buy a used vehicle, you're looking at 11% right now. And combined with the current prices of new vehicles and used vehicles, the averages, it really becomes alarming at just how much we pay month to month. On a new vehicle, the national average is over $760 per month for that monthly payment. And for a used vehicle, $525. That's a lot to really incorporate into your budget. And really the Hyundai Elantra here in particular might be among the most affordable vehicle options you can consider. I think right here might be the cheapest one I found on the lot. And we're looking at $23,000 and some change for this 2024 Elantra SE. Maybe I spoke too soon. I don't even know what this is. We're gonna go look at it. But this is, look at this little beep beep here. This has got to be the most affordable vehicle here. This is, hey, I was right. Look at that. $21,790 for this 2025 Venue SE. How about that? This thing is you can brag to your non-binary friends about this. EV sales were pretty bleak throughout 2024. The popularity is just no longer there, but Tesla has actually done the best and by a long shot comparatively to all other EVs. The Ford F-150 Lightning over there, Ford Mustang Mach-E, terrible sales throughout 2024. Even with the huge government subsidies, tax credits applied to them, discounts, and incentivized interest rates, they cannot move that inventory. But Tesla's done okay. Vehicles like this monstrosity behind me originally came with huge markups. I mean, dealerships were really licking their chops when they got these delivered as inventory because they knew that they can tag you with a $20,000 or even $30,000 markup over MSRP already on this hugely inflated MSRP. Over 9,000 pounds is the weight, and well, this EV here is now stacking up on dealership lots. I'm talking dozens upon dozens sitting unsold at most locations. And just for context, both Rivian and Lucid, both of them of which are EV companies, saw the largest loss in their stock, or their share price, this last year in 2024. 55% loss for Rivian and a 48% loss in Lucid. Pretty sad. And again, good luck trying to buy a full-size SUV right now with these current prices. Here we have a GMC Denali Yukon. This is a standard size Yukon, not the XL, but $96,500 for this one. No thanks. For anybody cross-shopping a 2024 front end compared to the new redesigned 2025 front end, well, here you have it, side by side. I think both of them look just fine, but what doesn't look fine is that price tag on both. Over $85,000 for the AT4 over here, the 2024 model, and over $96,000 over here on the 2025 Denali model. No thank you. So between the irresponsible lending practices of so many banks throughout the US, combined with so many consumers committing loan fraud and insurance fraud, we, the regular consumer, we're paying the price. We're paying the price now because we have to go through so many other hoops and hurdles in order to get an auto loan and get one approved for us, because so many people have committed that auto loan fraud, combined with insurance fraud. So many people, especially down in Florida during the hurricane, what do? They set up their vehicles to be damaged by the hurricane, right? So many people committed that insurance fraud, and that drove up the price for you and I. Obviously they're in Florida more than most places, but collectively across the board, when we see a rise in the amount of repairs and totals of vehicles taking place, you and I ultimately pay for it. We all kind of pay into the whole insurance bin. And because of that, that's why we have seen insurance premiums over double throughout the last 2.5 years. And well, that is a compounding issue that doesn't appear to be getting any better. I do firmly believe that dealerships are in a unique position right now. They either have to cut their losses now, cut their losses early, take a loss on their inventory, or face the consequences, which could ultimately lead to bankruptcy, right? Them ultimately closing their doors. Many of these vehicles have been sitting here for weeks on end unsold. Now, some of them are coming with an advertised discount. Some of these $2,000 off, $9,000 off for that CT4 down here. But is that enough? We need to be seeing 10 to 15% below invoice in order to actually move much of this inventory. With so many of these full-size pickup trucks costing between $85,000 and $100,000, it's really no surprise that we're seeing so many of them sitting unsold, right? People just can't afford to make these mortgage-sized monthly payments on these auto loans, right? Many Americans are feeling obligated to buy vehicles like this. Very boring vehicles, but they come with a boring price tag. Much of these Buicks here are between $30,000 and $34,000. I think little Tommy and little Timmy are going to have to take a ride in the Buick to soccer practice because, well, vehicles like this Escalade Premium Luxury are nearly $110,000. Let's talk Honda for a second. Even recently, there's been an impact to their reliability ratings, ultimately affecting the profitability for Honda at large. As many of you guys are aware, they are merging with Nissan and Mitsubishi. I think that's a very good thing for a number of reasons. Not only does it help Nissan, which has been a sinking ship for years, especially within the US, more than half of their dealerships here have been losing money month to month. The profitability is just not there for Nissan, and they're having to cut 20% of the production moving forward and cutting over 9,000 employees between now and next year. They are just not in a good spot. By Honda merging with them, they can really capitalize on the few good examples across the entire Nissan lineup, capitalize on them, and make them better moving forward. Not to mention, it expands their footprint, being able to produce more vehicles at a larger scale, allowing them to compete more with the automotive manufacturers out of China, which is ultimately what Honda wants to do. I gotta admit, I think it's a little bit telling that, generally speaking, this particular dealership only has 2 or 3 Honda Ridgelines available at any given time. Right now, they only have 1, so they are selling, but this one here, it's been here for a few weeks, and for some reason, this black edition Honda Ridgeline, priced at now $45,000 with a $5,000 discount, even it isn't selling. We talked about it before, but there were over 80 franchise, larger scale dealerships that had to shut their doors throughout 2024. In the big scheme of things, it may not sound like a whole lot, right? There's thousands of franchise dealers out there, but it is pretty unprecedented to see that many close in 2024, and I would argue we are going to see more close their doors here in 2025. I don't love it because what does that mean? It means a lot of Americans are going to be losing their jobs, and I never want to see that ever, right? But when we see so many dealerships stacking up their inventory, and we're seeing that record growth of inventory, and now dealers turning away their allocations in inventory, what does that mean? That means the production needs to be cut. That means production and assembly line workers need to be cut. They need to be laid off. And that means parts and tire auto manufacturers, those employees are ultimately going to be laid off because we no longer need those parts. We no longer need those tires. That is the rub of it all for me. Although I want to see us, the consumer, be able to get phenomenal deals and see the prices of these hugely inflated MSRPs come down, it's just a double-edged sword, right? But ultimately, it is a byproduct of the greed that we see from auto manufacturers combined with the greed that we see from dealerships, right? It's just a perfect storm that we are ultimately going to have to foot the bill for if a government bailout were to take place. Let me know what your thoughts are on that. Do you think one will occur or not? So let's talk through the vehicles that are sitting on dealership lots the longest right now. So from the top, Jeep Wranglers. Jeep Wranglers right now, we saw a 54% price increase on MSRPs for Jeeps across the board since 2019. That's among the highest that we have seen across all vehicle manufacturers, 54% increase. But because of that, Jeep Wranglers are now sitting on dealership lots collecting dust for over 280 days, sometimes over 300 days. Next in line is the Ram 1500, 2500, and 3500 pickup trucks. There are over 25,000 available units right now across the US. Over 25,000 units. The average days on lots is 460 days. Almost a year and a half is the average days on lots, which is absolutely insane. But that is across the entire lineup, right? Not just an individual truck. Next in line, the Lincoln Navigator. We're seeing Lincoln Navigators sit on lots for 262 days. Not much of a surprise when the average price tag of those is teetering over $90,000. Next, we have the Hyundai Ioniq 6. We've talked about it plenty in this video. There's very little interest in EVs right now. During the pandemic, when money was quote-unquote cheap, EVs served as a good secondary or third vehicle for the household, but not anymore. The Hyundai Ioniq 6, there's over 6,000 units available right now across the US, and they're just sitting collecting dust. Next in line is the Land Rover Discovery, with an average lot time of 269 days. People, again, just are not flocking to Land Rover dealerships right now. Next would be the Audi Q8, with an average price tag starting at $85,000 and up. People are saying no thank you to those. Average time on lot, 270 days. Next is the Grand Wagoneer. The Jeep Grand Wagoneer really is just a kind of a poorly placed segment vehicle, right? Jeep has never been known to be a luxury segment vehicle, but they priced it as such. The average sale price of a Grand Wagoneer is over $102,000, and there's no reliability reputation with that either. Now, I gotta admit, when you walk most dealerships right now, you generally see a huge lineup of unsold pickups, right? Unsold trucks just lining and plaguing the dealership lot. And that is largely what this place is. Trucks and larger SUVs. We do have a smaller lineup here of Chevy Equinoxes and a couple Trailblazers down at the end there, but these are actually selling. The trucks are coming with pretty big discounts. We're talking $8,000 to $12,000 off much of these examples here, to include these Silverados, these Chevy Colorados. But these here, there's not much of a discount because that starting price point is a lot more bearable, right? So this, I'll show you the Chevy Equinox here. You get a $1,000 trade assist on this one, which is hardly anything, but it's because that price tag there is just over 34 grand. It's a bearable price tag, and people can actually afford to get a loan out and make those monthly payments, right? Whereas much of those trucks over there are between $60,000 and $90,000 depending on the trim, which is why we actually see a discount. So I'll leave you with this. When you go to your local dealership and you're trying to buy a new vehicle, just know that you truly are in the driver's seat. Don't let them convince you otherwise. Don't let them convince you that, yeah, hey, this inventory is only going to be here for a little bit. We only got one or two of them, because you can drive up the road, go to a different dealership, and I guarantee it, they're going to have that same exact vehicle that you're wanting, and they're likely going to be willing to play ball, much more so than that dealership if they're trying to stiff arm you a little bit. You're in the driver's seat, expect a huge discount, and expect an incentivized interest rate right now. And if they don't offer it, like I said, drive up the road, go to the next dealership. So we'll wrap up the video there, guys. As always, I sincerely appreciate you taking the time to tune into these videos. If you appreciate this type of content at all, I respectfully request that you please consider liking and subscribing. Your support means a lot, and hopefully at some point this channel will eventually get big enough to where we can actually drive some positive change within the automotive industry. Hopefully at least send a message to many of these greedy dealerships out there. So as always, thank you for watching. Until next time.